I'm about to show you something that many people watching this video will never have seen up close before. Follow me. See that? Especially for you younger ones, that's called a gear lever or gear stick. And down on the floor, that extra pedal on the left operates the clutch, which helps you use the gear stick because this WRX RS is what's known as a manual, which means you get to change the gears and wrest back control from a modern car, many of which seem hell-bent on taking over completely.
This is the 5th generation version of what long ago morphed into a cult phenomenon, the Rex, with hardcore devotees around the globe loving its brash turbo flat 4 performance and tenacious all-wheel drive dynamics.
It's been tweaked for the 2024 model year with heaps of extra safety tech and upgraded multimedia, which is the perfect excuse to strap in and reacquaint ourselves with this compact powerhouse. So stay with us to see if this small sedan with the lot has what it takes to qualify for a spot on your driveway. The Subaru WRX RS weighs in at just under 53k before on-road costs. If you want the RS Sport with the CVT Auto, it sits at just under $55,500.
There are some tasty alternatives hovering around that price band, including the Toyota Yaris GR, Mazda MX-5 GT RS, and Mini Cooper S Clubman Classic.
But maybe the most telling competition is closer to home, with the less powerful but even purer Subaru BRZ TS 2+2 Coupe undercutting this car by more than $4,000.
Either way, aside from the standard performance and safety tech we'll get to shortly, this car boasts an impressive included features list, the highlights being dual-zone climate control air, 8-way power adjustable and heated sports front seats, 10-speaker Harman Kardon audio, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, a sunroof and alloy wheels, and there's heaps more.
For all the details, read my written review at carsguide.com.au. But this Subaru WRX RS delivers plenty of bang for your bucks when it comes to performance and value. For a while there in the mid to late teens, it felt like Subaru was pulling the covers off a Visive-themed concept car design roughly every 5 minutes.
Future-focused SUVs, crossovers and wagons, as well as 2017's performance concept, a muscular four-door that clearly had an influence on the look and feel of this car.
From its sinister headlights, all business hood scoop, and these pumped guards fueled by these 18-inch black alloy rims, the WRX RS's intent is clear. And at the back, the professional grade theme continues. These quad exhaust tips, boot lid spoiler, and what at first glance appears to be a multi-vane diffuser, but is actually more aesthetic than functional.
Inside, the dash is a fairly busy mix of sharpish angles and shallow curves. The dash dominated by an 11.6-inch portrait-oriented multimedia screen with a separate instrument pod for the driver next to it. The colour palette is mid-grey to black with dark metallic highlights here and there, with alloy covers on all 3 pedals, as well as patches of faux carbon on the doors and steering wheel. Sports front seats look and feel good, and the overall standard of fit and finish is high.
The WRX RS is powered by a 2.4 litre, horizontally opposed, turbo intercooled 4-cylinder petrol engine, developing just over 200 kilowatts and 350 newton metres. Some call it flat, others a boxer. No matter which way you go, it's the WRX's mechanical calling card, delivering that distinctively raucous, pulsing engine sound and exhaust note.
The all-alloy unit features direct injection and dual variable valve timing. Its relatively flat design lowering the car's centre of gravity significantly.
As we discussed earlier, in this case, it sends drive to all 4 wheels via a 6-speed manual gearbox and a centre viscous limited slip differential, able to distribute torque between the front and rear axles. But if you really want a CVT auto, you can have one in the RS Sport.
At just under 4.7 metres long, a little over 1.8 metres wide and close to 1.5 metres tall with a roughly 2.7 metre wheelbase, the WRX stands as a big small sedan.
At 183 centimetres tall, I've got plenty of breathing space up the front here, the away slope of the dash opening up the front part of the cabin.
For storage, there's lots, including a centre console box between the seats, 2 cup holders and some oddments trays in the centre console, door pockets with room for decent sized bottles, and a medium glove box.
Then in the back, I've got plenty of room for my feet and my legs, but unfortunately, a noggin headlining interface is all too common. It's a little bit short on headroom, and also no individual ventilation in the back, which is always a thumbs down. But in terms of storage, you've got one map pocket behind the front passenger seat. You've got bins in the doors. Our CarsGuide bottle, you really have to wrestle it in there. There's the size of it. It will just fit. But the fold down armrest has a couple of positions for bottles or cups as well. So it's not too bad really.
Power and connectivity runs to a 12-volt socket in the front, as well as USB A and C sockets for charging and or media, plus 2 USB charge points, again A and C, in the back. The WRX's boot offers 411 litres of storage space, which is good, but remember, the aperture isn't as accommodating as a hatch or SUVs. The 60/40 split folding rear seats improve flexibility though. A space saver spare sits under the floor, and braked trailer towing capacity is a handy 1200 kilograms. Subaru's official combined cycle fuel economy figure for the WRX is 9.9 litres per 100 kilometres, which is moderate for a performance sedan like this. Over a week covering mainly urban and suburban driving with some enthusiastic sessions and a hint of freeway running thrown in, we recorded an average of 10.6 litres per 100 kilometres, which isn't outrageous. Worth noting, the minimum fuel requirement is the pricier 95 RON Premium Unleaded, and you'll need 63 litres of it to fill the tank, which translates to a theoretical range of around 635 kilometres and roughly 595 kilometres using our real-world number.
So I'm showing my age here, but I've got to own up to having tested the original WRX, which was an Impreza WRX in the early 90s. And remembering that it stands for World Rally Experimental, and Subaru was in the thick of its World Rally commitment and rallying in Australia and New Zealand, by the way. And that car was really eyebrow raising in the way it delivered its power. It was non-linear. All came on in a rush, sort of. You felt like you were on a horse and you're trying to pull back on the reins. This car is altogether better than that. However, that characteristic is still there. You do get this kind of whoosh of power rather than a completely linear delivery. Maximum torque is available from 2000 RPM all the way to 5200, and peak power takes over at 5600. So you've got this just thick band of oomph in the mid-range. It's really enjoyable.
Subaru doesn't quote a 0 to 100 kilometres an hour figure, but expect it to come up in the high 5-second bracket.
You've got that characteristic pulsing, kind of throbbing engine and exhaust sound. It does boom a little bit in the cabin, and you have to be ready for that. There's no change of mode for the exhaust. What you hear is what you get. So you either get used to it and live with it or not. And the gear shift, the 6-speed manual, it's not kind of click-clack definite in its change, but it is really nicely defined. The clutch is pretty much perfectly weighted. It is a pleasure to shift through the ratios. So the WRX is underpinned by the Subaru Global platform, which, as is always the way, it's been made stiffer in every direction, including torsionally, but it does have its effect. This car feels well buttoned down. Suspension is by struts at the front and double wishbones at the rear, which is a pretty impressive setup. You've got 245 width rubber on the 18-inch rims. It feels grippy and really well planted in cornering. But there's no big penalty in terms of ride and refinement. The car's quite comfortable. We've been over some pretty ordinary, bumpy, patched kind of B roads during the course of today's drive. And yes, you can feel them, of course, but it's pretty good in terms of the way this car is able to soak them up. Now, when it comes to steering, for me, it's almost like, you know, shaking someone's hand. What's the feel like? Is it firm, limp, whatever? This car feels terrific. It's very accurate. It points nicely. The steering, the road feel, you've got a really good connection with the front tyres. As you turn in, you know exactly what's going on. And despite this car's weight, it's 1.5 tonnes, despite aluminium guards at the front and aluminium bonnet, even the fuel flaps made out of resin to save some weight. It feels nimble, it feels really alert and ready to respond to whatever input you're giving it. The benefit of a horizontally opposed design is that it allows the engine to be packaged low down in the car, which lowers your centre of gravity. And the all-wheel drive system has a default 45 front, 55 rear drive split. So you get that kind of notionally rear-wheel drive feel when you're cornering. So it does feel low, well composed. It stays balanced as you're heading into corners. You know exactly what you're doing because you're getting all that feeling back through the suspension and steering. So braking is no surprise, it's ventilated discs all around, 2 piston calipers at the front, singles at the rear. Now from time to time the WRX has been criticised for its braking performance, and while we haven't put this one on the circuit and really gone to town, you know, in hammering the brakes, we have given them a fair workout during the course of this review, and they've stood up to that kind of pressure very well. So nice progressive pedal, and the actual ability to wash off speed is pretty impressive. Worth pointing out that whilst there's a large portrait kind of oriented multimedia screen in the centre, the dials, the main ones being speedometer and tachometer, are traditional analogue, digitally driven, I'm sure, but there's a small 4.2-inch screen in the centre with all the information that you really need, a digital speedometer, average fuel economy, other things that you're able to scroll through, so it does the job really well. Turning circle is about 11 metres, and that's not too bad in terms of often being able to get away with a U-turn rather than 3-point turn, and that's supported by a pretty decent reversing camera, the clarity of which is more than acceptable. And one other touch is no electric parking brake. It's manual, ratchet with the button, the whole thing. It's just another pointer. You might call it old school, or you might call it refreshingly engaging in that you're doing the pulling on of the handbrake.
The Subaru WRX's previous maximum 5-star ANCAP assessment has timed out, and the car is currently unrated, but onboard active crash avoidance tech is extensive. In a 2024 model year update, the RS manual picked up Subaru's EyeSight package, adding AEB, adaptive cruise, and more assists, warnings, and alerts than you could poke a crash test dummy at. For all the details, check out my written review on the CarsGuide site. But if an impact is unavoidable, there are 8 airbags on board, including full-length side curtains and a front centre bag to minimise head clash injuries in a side-on crash. And there are 3 top tethers and 2 ISOFIX anchors for baby capsules and/or child seats across the second row. Hard to fault this machine when it comes to safety.
Subaru covers the WRX with a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is still the norm in the mainstream market, although it must be said that some brands are now moving to 7 years unlimited kilometres.
The main service interval is 12 months 15,000 kilometres, also on par with the market, and cap price servicing is available. Average for the first 5 years is just under $535 per workshop visit, which is on the high side but maybe to be expected for a highly tuned car like this. That said, roadside assist is complimentary for 12 months, which is a nice sweetener.
Over 3 decades, the Subaru WRX has matured into a more grown-up, refined performance package. It's fast, excellent dynamically, but it's comfortable. Safety's top shelf, it's well screwed together, and the value equation stacks up. And I just love the way you feel in control. Suck yeah!